Hello students, I want to give you some instructions on how to complete assignment number 4. In this assignment we're going to be dealing with motion and action photographs, and you will be using your camera settings to enhance the motion effect in different ways. Shutter speed is the crucial variable here. Before you get out and shoot, please look at the material that's here. These are really good articles. None of them are very long. They're blog posts basically, and they just take a few minutes to read. But this one on long exposure, this one on freezing motion, those are kind of the two extremes with motion capturing photography. But I also want you to know that even if you have an SLR, you're probably going to be using your phone to take photographs as well. And there's a couple of very good articles down here. And then if we go back to the folder again, and you can see there's some videos in here. And these are really good videos, and I really go through videos every time I teach this course. I go and I found these videos specifically for this course. Let's go back up. Okay, so let's go over the instructions specifically, and here's the document for the instructions. So again, we're really going to be talking about shutter speed. Remember, shutter speed is how long the opening in the lens will be open, allowing light to come in. So you can set it, even on an iPhone, for speeds that are slow, and that would be maybe 1/15th of a second or 1/30th of a second. You can go slower than that. But my experience is that if you're shooting at less than 1/1/15th and you have real slow shutter speeds, you really need to be on a tripod. You can get away with 1/15th, but you're going to have to be very steady. So hold your camera in close to your body. Don't extend it way out. And if you can brace yourself on a wall or something like that, that'll help you out. Now the other extreme is very fast shutter speeds, and you're not going to have to worry about camera motion in here. When you're shooting slow speeds, you can actually get blur in your images just because you're moving the camera a little bit. That's not going to happen when you're shooting at 1/500th of a second. That's fast. And this will basically try to freeze the action for you. You're going to select modes on your camera, and the best thing to do if you have the SLR camera is to use the shutter priority setting. And in this one, you're going to want to have your shutter, and you can set the shutter speed, and then your camera will automatically adjust the aperture, the f-stop, to compensate for having more or less lighting there. Now if you get in a situation where you need to get more light in your camera, then that's where you adjust the ISO setting. That's the camera sensitivity setting. This is a real good article here, Advanced Camera Controls for iOS. That's the Apple operating system that your phone has. All right, so what we're going to want to do is we're going to be stationary, and the first one I just recommend picking a place on a road. Be safe, but when the cars come by, one car at a time. If you get a bunch of cars, this doesn't work too well, but you're going to have a very slow shutter speed and get a shot of a car going by. Now what will probably happen is because the camera shutter will be open longer, it means it will capture more of the movement of the subject. So that's a blurred effect. Sometimes you want that effect. Sometimes that conveys the sense of action and motion. Then we go over to the fastest, and let's say you shoot at 1/500th or 1/1000th of a second, and then this is a middle range. So you're really going to take 3 photos in the same setup. You're not going to be using the same car, but just let these vehicles go by and capture one at the slowest, one somewhere in between, and one where it's very fast. Now I want you to try and do the same thing again, but don't use a car, use something else. And for example, this is a kind of a cool photograph of somebody just standing still, and there's a train or a subway that's whipping by here. Now there's not going to be a subway in Marshall County as far as I know, but you might be able to come up with something. But here the idea is your primary subject is not moving, and this goes by and it makes an interesting photograph. But there are other things that you can shoot and adjust the shutter speed. Of course, where you have the shutter speed open longer and you're at night, this would clearly be on a tripod, but you can see how all of this setting around here is stationary, but these streaks are caused by vehicles or trains or something like that that's whipping by here. So that's a kind of a cool effect. Now the opposite extreme is where you have a really fast shutter speed, and for example, here's a glass of milk and something is dropped into it, and you can see how these drops are just frozen in the air. So that's the two extremes. One is you're letting the shutter be open longer and you're capturing motion as essentially lines because they're just moving along. Everything else will be stationary. And then this is the other extreme. Now kind of the classic on this kind of stuff is waterfalls, not huge waterfalls, but so over here on the right we have a relatively slow shutter speed, and so the rocks aren't moving but the water is, and it creates this sort of a gauzy ephemeral effect of the water because your shutter is open long enough that the water is moving and you capture that movement as sort of a blur effect. The opposite extreme is the fast shutter speed, and that will just freeze these drops of water. This is the same waterfall, but two very different shots. Now another technique you want to master is where you have a subject that's going by and you actually swing your camera around and you follow that main subject. And when you do that, you'll be able to stay up with the speed of the vehicle or the bike or whatever, and you will freeze the motion, but see what's happening in the background is and this definitely conveys a sense of speed. Now this is tricky. You actually have to be a little bit closer to the subject for this kind of thing to work. If you're way far away, swinging the camera doesn't give you a whole lot. So get closer, just experiment with this and try doing two different things, okay, using the same technique of where you are panning with the action. It can also be something in a sports event where you have like a running back that's going by. Again, you're going to have to be fairly close. All right, and then just in terms of action shots, remember that was one of our genres that we started out with. So I want you to just take 4 good action shots of your choice. Just make sure that they have some real action. I've had students that will turn in action shots and it's 3 people talking to each other or a dog looking at you, something like that. That is not action. You want action, you want motion. So in this example over here, this is a interesting shot. Now you notice that it's actually shot into the light. And what does that do? That just blocks out there's no light on this side of the subject at all. So it winds up being a silhouette, but a very interesting photograph. All right, so what are you going to turn in? You're going to 6 photographs using the different shutter speed settings. One is going to be with a vehicle on the road, and the other will be something else. I want 2 different images where you're using the panning technique to freeze the subject, and then just shoot 4 different subjects in action. So that comes up to 12 photos. Now remember, what you want to do is to put these into a document and upload that document as a PDF file. Please just put 1 image per page and make that image big on that page. Now, we're going to be doing this for most of the rest of the assignments. So for every photograph, you need to write this down. You're not going to be able to remember it, but you will put down on each image. For example, you're going to say shutter number 1, and then you're going to have what camera you're using, what the shutter speed was for that image, what the f-stop or aperture was, what the ISO is, and then the lens length. So this, if you can't quite figure out what lens length is, you can probably just say wide, standard, or telephoto. But I need that information, and you do too. If you keep track of this stuff, then you can start building on the experience you have. So that's assignment number 4, focusing on motion and using primarily shutter speed. So this will be due on the 5th of March, I believe it is, and you can submit it in there. Please don't get behind on these exercises. If you're behind already, you got to really get going at this point, because there's no way you can do all the photographs in the last couple of weeks of the class. If you have questions, please let me know. Good luck.